Hi guys, so in this video we're going to be having a closer look at the VR movement component. So this component actually allows you to freely move around in VR space, as you can see here in the demo. So I'm just flying around this planet here. I can dive, move it around. It follows the movement of my motion controller. And I could just freely float around space, fly towards this moon here, diving a little bit. There you go. And trying not to crash. There. So you can see you can even float around, move down, hover up, move forward, orbit this moon here. All right, let's get cracking and do this. All right, so back in Unreal, we'll need to open up our Pawn Blueprint class. And from here, first thing is what we need to do is to add the VR movement component onto our class, okay? So just type VR movement and it should show VR pawn component VR movement. So once we've attached it, this pawn component here, the VR movement component to VR pawn, we'll just drag it along the event graph and think about what we need to do. All right, so first, what I want to do is to enable VR movement. So just look for that function there. So under VR, you have enable VR movement. And for speed, I'm just going to type in 5.0, not 50, 5.0. Okay. And I'm going to put in a pawn movement reference. So the movement reference is the object or the actor in your game or in your VR experience that the pawn is going to be following. All right. For this one, I'm just going to use the motion controller left. The left motion controller. Gonna tie that up there. All right, I could have also set up manual rotation if I wanted to, but since I want to be doing a free movement in VR space, I'm just gonna use the motion controller. Okay. All right, so now that we have that basic setup, what else do we want to do? So I want to enable VR movement, and I also want to disable VR movement because we don't want to be flying around VR space nilly-willy. So disable VR movement. All right, so this is the basic setup or basic actions that we need for VR movement. Okay. Now we need to decide on when are we going to be enabling VR movement and when we're going to be disabling VR movement. So let's have a quick look at the Vibe motion controller and the key mappings. For this demo, what I want to do is if you pressed on your left motion controller, this area here of the Vibe motion controller thumb pad, we want to be able to move forward in VR space, or at least the trajectory or the rotation is moving forward. We're moving towards the screen area here. See the screen line? So we want to be able to move towards that. And if I press this area here, the southern area of the Vive controller thumb pad, what I want to happen is that I want to move backwards in VR space. Okay, and all of the different angles and all of the different rotations that's handled for you by the enable VR movement or by the VR movement component. So you don't need to worry about that. Okay. So now we know that the mappings for this is face button 1, motion controller, face button 1 maps to this area of the Vive controller, and face button 3 maps to this area. All right, so at the bare minimum, that's what we need to know. Just close that up. And all right, so let's conjure up that event. So it's event motion controller left, face button 1. Okay. So when it's pressed, we want to enable VR movement. And when the user releases the face button 1 button, we want to be able to disable it. Okay. So that takes care of the forward movement. Now we want to be able to do the moving backwards, right? So first off, I'm just gonna duplicate that here, down. All right, so it's pretty much the same except for the event. Instead of face button 1, we want to use face button 3 to move backwards. So we'll just conjure up event, motion controller, left, face button 3. There you go. Pop that in there and pressed, and released is disabled. All right, to move backwards, we simply need to change the pawn movement speed to negative 5.0, to a negative value. So we'll be moving backwards if we do that. And that's how simple it is. So now you can, with this really simple blueprint script, I can move backwards and forwards in VR space. And obviously this is just using the left motion controller. You could duplicate this whole lot and then point it to the right motion controller, face buttons as well if you want to. So we'll compile that and save. And let's give this baby a whirl. So with that, just very basic blueprint scripts, we're flying around and floating around VR space here. So I'm going to swoosh right to the left. So moving forward, I can move backwards as well because we've set it up in blueprint. So that's what it does. And move forward, dive right into this planet here. Dive and yeah, swoosh up like this. And that's all for now, guys. Have fun with it and see you in the next video.